Good morning everybody. We will have to concentrate on the services a bank has to lend towards its customers. In the previous class, we were able to understand what are the agency services a bank is going to render towards the customer. To recollect back the agency services, what the bank is going to render towards its customer is collection on behalf of the customer, the bills and checks, payment on behalf of the customers of the bills, checks, promissory note, bonds, etc. Making payments on behalf of customer, purchase and sale of securities on behalf of customers, advising customer regarding stock exchange investments, arranging for remittance of funds on behalf of the customers, acting as a trustee, executor and administrator, serving as correspondents and representatives of the customer, and also rendering of merchant banking services, a very important service towards his customer. And now in today's class we are going to further understand the concept of general utility services. The general utility services, to understand, are those services rendered by the banker not only to his customers but also to the general public. That means these are the services not only as a customer you are going to render him, but it will also have its effect on the public, general public. What are those functions that you are going to render? The various miscellaneous services or general utility services are: the first service that you are going to get is safe custody of the valuables. Banker has to make an adequate arrangement like the strong room and give safety of the valuables that a customer wants to keep safely. What are those things a customer wants to keep safely? For example, safely is something which is valuable to him. That is the jewel, the will, life insurance policies, title deed of the properties, bonds, etc. So what the bank does is, it will give a security arrangements by giving long, strong rooms with small lockers, and in these lockers you can keep your valuables and keep them safely there. And this is done by accepting the valuable of the customer for safe custody and not given to customer just like that. It is given to him on the basis of hire purchase. That means he has to take the locker by paying a nominal service charges to the bank, and accepting these charges, the locker facility would be given by the banker to his customers. Thus, bank gives a very important service towards the customer, that is safe custody of valuables. Very important general utility service a bank gives towards its customer is dealing in foreign exchange business. What is a foreign exchange? It's a term which we have to understand when we say deals with foreign exchange. Foreign exchange is a mechanism by which the currency of one country gets converted into the currency of another country. This conversion of currency is done by the banks who deal in foreign exchange. These banks maintain stock of one currency in form of balances with the banks. Not only dealing with the exchange of currency, it is also concerned with granting of finance to export, providing pre-shipment advances, post-shipment advances at a very concessional rate of interest. That means foreign exchange business is not only exchanging of currencies of one country to another country for its customer, but also to support the customer in dealing with export and import. That is, finance to export, credit to import. Export finance is granting finance to the export. Import credit is to help the importer to import goods on credit by granting the most commercial letters of credit. And this really helps the customers because the credit extended by a bank in the importer's country will help him to export, that is deliver the goods. So this is a very important aspect of the bank, that is dealing in foreign exchange business. So for conducting a foreign exchange business, we are in need of finance for exporting and credit for importing, and this is done by our bank. The next function, which is very important, is called issuing of letters of credit. What is this letter of credit? This letter of credit is a letter which is issued by a bank that is payable on presentation to any correspondent of the issuer. So whenever a customer has to pay towards his seller the amount, and that amount, if he doesn't have with him, it is paid by the bank on behalf of the customer. Say a buyer has gone with a contract of sale with the customer, and as a seller he will ask the buyer to make his payments so that he can settle his contract of agreement. But if the buyer has no amount with him but he has to make payment, then he will go to the banker and ask for a financial assistance which will help him to make these payments. And thus what the bank does is, he will collect the documents or by the seller. He will collect all the documents by the seller on behalf of the buyer and gives to the buyer along with the letter. That is, the buyer has to give the banker the letter of credit application, the documents, and then the buyer bank will finalize the creditworthiness of the buyer, the trustworthiness of the buyer, and then give this letter of credit to him to make the payments to the seller. And this support what the bank gave towards its customer is called letter of credit. That is, the buyer's bank is going to make the payments to the seller, and this type of support which is being given by the customer, by the banker towards the customer, is a very important function what the bank does towards his customer. So a letter of credit is issued by the bank that is payable. So once you get a letter of credit by the buyer's bank, then that will be payable on presentation to any seller or to a correspondent of the issuer. That is called as letter of credit. So once we are giving such a service towards the customer, he also gives a very another important service, that is issuing of traveller's check. What is a traveller's check? A traveller's check is a fixed amount that may be cashed or used in payments abroad after endorsement. That means to say, you have a fixed amount of a check with you which you will carry abroad, and there you can use this check on the signature of the holder and use it for making the payments. So banker issues these traveller's check to its customer to make his correspondence easy when he moves abroad. The next very important service that has been given by the banker towards the customer is acting as a referee. So before I say something more on what acting as a referee is, we should not forget, we have to recollect that banker is performing general utility services towards his customer by keeping the safe custody of the valuables. Secondly, dealing in foreign exchange business. Thirdly, issuing of traveller's letter of credit, traveller's check and circular notes. The fourth very important service is acting as a referee. What does it mean to say? Acting as a referee. Acting as a referee means whenever a customer, whoever has an account in a bank, wants to say something about his financial stability, his credibility, how sound he is when he has to make a business transaction, he has to give a reference that he is a sound personality, he is a trustworthy personality to carry on the business relationship with him. When such situation comes in, he has to find a person who will help him out in acting as a referee, as a reference. On his words, the person with whom the customer wants to make an agreement will be satisfied to know that he is trusty. So, a banker acts as a referee regarding the financial standings of his customer. If he is appointed as a referee by a customer, the banker will answer to all the trade inquiries made about his customer by any other businessman. By serving as a referee, he will enable his customer to enter into a business relation with other businessmen easily. And this support is very much needed because any customer, if he has a very good reference by the bank, then his transactions, his agreements of contract can be easily made. The next aspect of service that has been given towards the customer is collecting information about other businessmen for his customers. A banker often collects information about other businessmen through their fellow bankers and supplies the information to his customer. That means to say, collecting information about the other businessmen. It is the customer who is doing some business, who is in need of an information of his other businessmen with whom he has to carry on the business. When he has to carry on the business with other businessmen, he must know whether he is doing a right decision, whether that businessman with whom he is carrying on the business is a right person chosen. If he chooses a wrong person and if an agreement made and if he is at a loss, then that may lead to a difficult situation in his credibility. Thus, he will ask the banker to collect the information about the other businessmen with whom he has to make an agreement of supply. It can be agreement of supply of giving raw materials or purchase of machineries, tools, equipments, whatever it is. He has to get information of the other businessmen. So now bank will not only act as a reference for other businessmen, it will also act in collecting information about the other businessmen for his customer. Thus, when he acts as a person who is collecting information about the businessman for the customer, then the information supplied by the banker will help him to overcome his losses. The next thing that you have to understand is underwriting of shares, debentures and common securities. To understand the service, we have to know what are shares and debentures. Shares is an investment of capital in any company. Debentures are the bonds and the common investments are called common securities. So now, underwriting of shares, that means to say if a customer has no person to purchase, if there is no person for a company to purchase his shares in the market, then he has to take a support of a person who takes the responsibility of purchasing of those shares and debentures and in a later part sell it. That means he has to act as an underwriter of the shares and debentures. In that situation, if a customer wants to act as an underwriter of the shares and debentures, what the bank does? Here, the part of the bank is to act as an underwriter for those shares and debentures made by the companies. Every modern banker underwrites the shares and debentures of his industrial training concern. This encourages productive investments, stimulates industrial, commercial development of the country. The next very important function that you have to perform here is collection of statistics and data. Every business requires lot of information. What is a data? A data is nothing but a source of information that has to be collected by the businessman to perform his activities successfully in his business world. And this collection of data is done basically through various sources of information, and these sources of information are your primary source and the secondary source. And collecting the information to the primary source is a very long procedure which requires the resource person to do it. And this collection of data by the primary sources is done with the support of the bank. So what the bank does here is it will provide him with collection of information relating to the various sources, that is from industry, from agriculture, from foreign trade, banking, commerce, and it goes to various people which gives him the data, and then that data would be synchronized to the help of the customer, and with synchronized data the customer will be able to manage the business community. The business community will be important to be managed, and it is possible only with the help of data, and that data will be collected on behalf of the customer by the banker. Any information, end of a time if you are in need of it, the bank says this is the data, you utilize it and take a right decision. And thus bank is providing a very good miscellaneous service of giving the information. People say without information the business world cannot be run successfully. So having a successful business endure, it is to depend on the collection of the data, that is the statistical data. Very important service what has been given by the bank towards a customer is called factoring service. What do you mean by this, a factoring service? A factoring service can be understood as a continuous arrangement between a financial institutions. Please get into your mind, you are making a continuous arrangement. With whom? It is the financial institution. Take for example, it is a commercial bank. It is called as a factor, and a business concern who becomes the client. So this is a situation where the commercial bank is a factor and the business concern is called the client. In between these two people, that is a commercial bank and the business concern, there is a continuous arrangement made. For what purpose is this arrangement made? This continuous arrangement is made for selling of goods and services to the trade customers, whereby the factor will purchase the book debts of its clients, administrators. The sales ledger of the client provides prepayment to the client against the book debts purchased. It means to say, in this arrangement, the client who has to make the payments on his sales purchases will be made by the commercial bank on behalf of him. That is, you are selling goods and services to your customers, whereby the factor will purchase the book debt of his clients. You have sold it, you have not got the money still, but that payments what you have not yet got will be paid by the factor. Who is the factor here? The commercial bank, which will pay the book debt of its clients, and then it will also provide prepayments to the clients. That means you have purchased something, you have not paid money for it, but now as a factor, the commercial bank will also make such prepayments against your debts of purchases what you have made. That is, for the sales what you have made, you have not paid, you have not got your payments, but you will get the money from the factor. For the purchases what you have made, though you have not made the payments for the purchases, for that the payments would be given by the factor. So this sort of a continuous arrangement that is being given by the financial institution, that is, for the money not got, you have got the money. For the money to be paid, you have got the payment made. And such a sort of a credit risk is taken by the commercial banks, and such credit risk taken by the commercial banks is what is called as factoring services, and this factoring services will be levied by the factor for the work involved in maintaining the sales ledgers, collection of debts and other related activities. I think I'm very clear with it. A factoring is a service given by the commercial bank as a continuous arrangement between the financial institutions. As a financial institution, it gives it between the client, financial institution and the client, and this comes into existence when you have to sell your goods, you have sold the goods but the money is still not paid, but the commercial bank says, okay, you have sold it already, the money will come on a later part, don't worry, I will give you the money now. And you have already purchased something for which you don't have money to give, so the commercial bank says, don't worry, I will give money to all those purchases. So before money comes, before the money is received, here the bank will provide you a financial assistance. That assistance is what is called as a factoring service, and it's a very good financial arrangement which has been given by the banker to the creditors, to the customers, because they have to have a existence of continuity of business. Just because they don't have money, they should not stop their business activities. So this service has been given to them. There's another very important service that has been given towards the customers, and that service is something called as lease financing. Now, let's know what is lease financing. Lease financing is nothing but an arrangement under which a person gets the right to use an equipment. That means to say, you have got some equipment with you. For example, it's a machinery or it's a building or a vehicle or whatever it is. So what you do here is, you have to get the right to use. It is a leasing is nothing but an arrangement to use that equipment, use that machinery, use that building. But the legal ownership will not be given to you. It is something which is given to you to use only for a certain period of time. That is called as leasing. I think I'm very clear with it. So for that amount of support, what you want to pay, that is called lease financing. That means to say, without getting the legal ownership for the same for a certain period of time, by paying certain amount of lease charges or the rent periodically, you will be able to use it. And for that, you are in need of money which will be supported by the commercial bank, which is called as lease financing. So leasing is an arrangement under which a person gets the right to use an equipment, machinery, building, vehicle without getting the legal ownership of the same for a certain period of time by paying certain amount of lease charges or rent periodically. So I think I'm very clear with the functions or the services what a bank is going to give towards the customer. So when we were in the previous content, were able to understand that a bank is able to perform various functions, and those various functions what the bank is able to perform are primary functions and secondary functions. When we were able to know it, the primary functions of the bank was receiving deposits, lending of funds, investment of funds on securities, creation of money. When we were able to know more on it, we learned that it also performs secondary services, and those secondary services were further divided into two categories, that is agency services and general utility services. In agency services, we were able to understand that as an agent, the banker is performing the various services towards his customer, and those services were collection of money on behalf of the customers, making payments on behalf of the customers, purchase and on sale of securities of the customers, advising customers regarding stock exchange investments, purchase and sale of securities on behalf of customers. I think I remember I said it. Arrange for remittance of funds on behalf of customers, acting as a trustee, executor and administrator, serving as a correspondent, representatives of the customers, rendering of merchant banking services. In today's class content, we were able to understand general utility services, and those services were safe custody of the valuables, dealing in foreign exchange business, issuing of traveller's letter of credit, circular notes, traveller's check. We were also able to understand acting as a reference, collecting information about other businessmen for customers, underwriting of shares, debentures and government securities, collection of statistics and data for its customers, a very beautiful service given by the bank, and a very important one, that is the factoring services, and not the last, the least, that is the lease financing. I think by this we will be able to understand the services and the functions of the bank towards its customer. That means a bank plays a very important role towards the customers. Thank you, and further to understand more on it, you can have a practice exercise on multiple choice questions being given out in the next slide, which will help you know to understand better. Thank you.